Welcome to the first ever Foundation recap. If you're not aware what we're doing here, what I'm doing here, this is kind of a test live stream. I'm currently at Waco, in Waco. I'm at my Airbnb, but we've been asked this several times to do kind of like a stats analysis breakdown type of show after the third round of a tournament, or second round in this case, prior to the final day, where basically we look at what's going on in the event. We look at what's been happening, what we're expecting to see in the final round tomorrow, go a little bit deeper in stats than we normally do in Grip Locked or the Nick and Matt show. And this is that show. This is what we're trying to do with it. We're basically, tonight is a test. We're just going to gauge some interest. Hopefully my internet at the Airbnb is good enough that we don't have too many issues, but yeah, we're just going to jump right into it. This tournament so far has been a wild one on both the MPO and the FPO fields. It's been very, very unusual, to say the least. So let's just start with the MPO. You know, today we had a lead card that featured Gavin Rathbun. I believe he's a player out of Florida. We haven't heard much from him. I know his name. I've heard of him. I think he's popped off at a few A tiers previously. This is one of his first big performances. We have a normal name in Nikko Locastro up there, but that's pretty much the only normal name, because then we have Bradley Williams, one of the smoothest throwers in the game. If you didn't get to watch him on coverage, his form is, some of the top of the game, but we normally don't see him. He's a Texas local. He's always, played good down here in Texas. And then one person that I'm really excited for is Gannon Buhr, a 15-year-old out of Iowa. I've followed him on Instagram for a while. We'll talk about him a little bit more. But the first thing I want to look at here is not necessarily who we're seeing at the top, but who we're not seeing at the top. And that is our usual suspects. We don't have to scroll far to find two of them, and Ricky Wysocki and Calvin Heimberg. Ricky's tied for fourth. He didn't make the lead card simply because Kale LaVisca had a better round than him. Kale popped off and shot a 10 down today, whereas Ricky had a good round, 7 down, back-to-back 7 downs to put him at 14 under for the event, but he's not going to be on lead card tomorrow. Calvin and Ricky are going to be on a chase card that's also made up of Raven Newsom, new player on tour. I actually played with Raven in college, phenomenal player for team MVP, and then Gannon Buhr. Both of those two are kind of young shots, going to be on a card with Ricky and Calvin tomorrow. That will be a covered card. So Ricky and Calvin still in this event, only 4 and 5 strokes out of the lead. We don't have to scroll far to find another one of our usual suspects in Chris Dickerson. He's 12 down for this event. It's just weird seeing all three of those, and then Paul Macbeth, 10 down for the event, seeing none of these guys on lead card. That is very weird to me, and I'm sure to you at home watching this tournament as well. But that's not where things get really weird. For one of these guys will probably end up in the top 3. I'm expecting one of them to really pop off tomorrow, really turn into 10, 11 under par. But when we look down, a little bit farther is where things get a little more interesting. Some of our other usual suspects in Kevin Jones and Eagle McMahon, they're nowhere to be seen right now. You have to scroll down to 35th place to find Kevin Jones. He shot 6 down today, which is a decent round, but that puts him at 6 down for the event after shooting even par yesterday. And then, speaking of Eagle, I did see on Facebook that he made a post. I believe this post has since been deleted because he was asking for a Zuka cart or some type of cart. He did end up getting that for today's round. But he was saying that he was struggling with something in his upper back, some type of back issue or something like that. That very well could be why we're seeing what we're seeing out of Eagle. But he's in 88th place right now at 1 over par. So even yesterday, 1 over par today. Very unusual characteristics for Eagle. I think there's a few things that factor into this for him, right? First off, I think this course does not perfectly suit Eagle's game. It does have the open aspect that Eagle's good at. He has plenty of overstable plastic and plenty of power that the open holes, he's going to do just fine with them. right? But once you get into the woods, that's a part that Eagle's been very open about. That's not the strong suit in his game. And the woods out here at Waco, they're not like a lot of woods at other courses, right? If you get off the fairway, it might as well be OB. Because, I mean, I've been walking this course. It's like looking at a wall of trees in front of you, like little trees where there's not gaps. I'm sure you've seen this on coverage some. So I think that's one thing that does play into this a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how his back injury or whatever happened with his I believe he said it was his upper back. What happens with that? Does he DNF tomorrow? It would not surprise me simply because he's not playing good. He's not in contention, and he's already made it public that there's a reason behind this. It's not just like he came out and just, played awful. There is some type of reason behind this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Eagle tomorrow. But if we look at kind of how these players got here, go a little bit deeper into the stats, first player I want to look at here is Nikko Locastro. In my opinion, at this current moment, he's in first. He's the top guy, in my opinion, to win this event tomorrow. He's been here before. He's a usual suspect on lead cards. He's someone who's been in the game for a long time, and he's got a lead right now. So how is he doing this? Well, if you take a look at his stats, circle 1 in regulations, meaning that he's given himself looks for birdie, first place at 67% of the holes. Circle 2 in regulation, also first place, 75% of the holes, which is unreal. 3 out of every 4 holes, circle 2 in regulation. His birdie percentage, also first place at 58%. So he's birdieing more holes than he's not. And then circle 2 putts is another stat that's really playing into this at 75%. I believe he's made 3 out of the 4 that he's taken. Only place that he looks like he's kind of struggling, to be honest with you, is circle 1X putting. He's in 75th at 71%. A big part of this, as I'm sure you've seen in the coverage, is the wind. You've got to be able to score well in the woods because in the woods it's at least calm. Obviously, the woods are tougher holes, but not when the wind's ripping like this. I mean, it is like 25 consistent, 15 to 25 mile an hour winds out here, especially for these guys teeing off later in the day. And that's another thing that we'll talk about on the FPO side is they're teeing off even after them. But the winds are no joke out here. That's probably why we're seeing Nikko struggling a little bit on the putting green as well as some of the other players. But you can tell with Nikko, circle 1 regulation, circle 2 regulation, birdie percentage, and circle 2 putts, he's dialed in. And there's one more stat to prove this, which is the strokes gained tee to green, which basically, if you're not familiar with this stat, it's how many strokes is Nikko and whoever else in the field gaining on the average player in the field with their drives. So basically getting from the tee to the green, how many strokes are they doing it better than the average person across the round? He's gaining 10.61 strokes over the average person. And another one of these stats that shows why he's doing this so consistently is his OB rate. At 0.028, he only has 1 OB throw the whole event so far through 2 rounds. If Nikko can keep up this consistency tomorrow, there's no reason to believe that he's not walking home with this. But someone who's going to be challenging him is Bradley Williams. One thing I want to talk about too here is looking at the lead card. I personally believe we're going to see the winner on MPO come from this lead card simply because, and my answer would be different if Ricky or Calvin or even Paul was able to push onto the lead card. But when you look at it, the lead card isn't going to have any of the usual comeback guys where they're putting pressure on them. So Nikko's going to go out there tomorrow with Bradley Williams, Gavin Rathbun, and Cale LaVisca, and he's not going to visually see Ricky gaining strokes on him during the round. He's not going to be able to visually see Calvin doing that, or even Paul. So that's going to make it a little bit tougher for these guys where Nikko's basically going to be in his own world. He's going to be setting his own pace. To me, I think that makes him a big favorite here because if Ricky was able to be that 4th person and Nikko could visually see, there goes 1 stroke, there goes 2 strokes. I think that's something that really can get in someone's head when they can visually see it versus if Nikko checks UDisc and sees, okay, Ricky's coming up a little bit. Now he's in third. That's a different feeling than when Ricky's on the card storming back. So personally, I believe that we're going to be looking at a Nikko or a Bradley Williams win here. But, you know, there's a deeper storyline in this. And one person I want to look at, if I can pull up his stats really fast, is Gannon Buhr, a 15-year-old out of Iowa. I quickly mentioned him. One thing that a lot of people don't know about Gannon is he actually suffered a partially torn ACL. I believe it was back in July of this previous year. He went through surgery, rehab. I believe he came back around October to November range. And so he's always been a great thrower of the disc. I followed him on Instagram for a while. I've seen this. But I think that with the torn ACL, it's made him a little bit more confident on the putting green. You know, it's not unusual to see someone pop off for one round, which he did that with a 54, 9 down opening round. But for someone like him who has not been on a Pro Tour lead card to suddenly be covered by, you know, I believe Jomez and also the Disc Golf Network on live coverage, and to be able to still come out and shoot a 59 round 2, stay on the chase card, it's a very, very impressive thing. And one thing that really shows that Gannon's out here being very accurate is his OB rate, which he's first in with 0. I believe it's him and 1 or 2 other people. He hasn't thrown OB. Basically what that tells me is he has very good control in the wind out here, because the main places OB come in are on the open holes. All of these are extremely windy, as I just briefly talked about before. And for him to be able to come out here and put on this type of performance through 2 rounds is very impressive to me. At 15 years old, I think that this is someone that we need to have on our radar. This is kind of reminiscent of Eagle coming onto the scene, even Kevin Jones, where we're not going to see him consistently this year. We probably won't see him consistently for the next few years. We might see him start to tour during the summers, but 15-year-old, he's still in high school. So right now, like, he can't go on tour. I don't know if maybe if he's homeschooled, he could go on tour. I'm not sure the exact in and out of that, but it's definitely going to be someone that I'm getting that type of feeling where this is going to be a tournament that he's going to perform well. I think he'll probably end up finishing in the top 10. I don't think he's really going to push forward too much. I don't think he's going to challenge for the win tomorrow, but I do think he'll probably finish in the top 10, maybe slip down to like 12th, 13th place. And I think that this is a player that over the next few years, we're going to start hearing his name more and more and more. I think that as we look at this, the future of our sport is extremely bright, because Gannon's not the only 15-year-old out there that's able to put up rounds like this. There's several other ones, and watching him do this is extremely encouraging to me, because you're going to have athletes like him and other athletes that now seeing contracts like Paul's, right, with a 10-year, $10 million. If they like disc golf and they're good enough to go play college in a different sport, they might be thinking to themselves, let me just take a year off of college and go be a touring professional disc golfer, see what I can do. That wasn't really an option before because it was a big risk. Now, and there wasn't a huge visual reward to these players. Now seeing big contracts like that and realizing there is money to be made in disc golf as a player, I think that we're going to start seeing more and more of these Gannon Buhr players where they're very athletic. You know, they're able to come in, shake up the scene a little bit, and now possibly tour as a 17, 18-year-old coming out of high school and make this a full-time thing. I think this is just a glimpse into what we're going to start seeing a lot more of, and I'm very excited to see a performance like this out of him. One more storyline on the MPO side that we have to cover is Colton Montgomery. He's last year's champion. Obviously, last year was cut 1 round short, which caused a lot of people to make comments, even doubt him somewhat, just like when Jerm won USDGC back in 2016. And I believe Waco's been cut short before more than once. Whenever there's a tournament that's cut short, the player who won kind of gets shorted, because if you ask Colton, he would have loved to play round 3 and prove I'm going to hold on to it through round 3. You know what I mean? You asked, Jerem's been asked this about his USDGC win. He's like, I would have loved to play round 4 to prove that I was still going to win. But unfortunately last year, people did know going into round 2 that this was it. But Colton, won the tournament through 2 rounds. He shot an incredible back 9. The second round, if you remember it, I believe he had 2 eagles on that back 9, being hole 18 and I don't remember the other hole, but it was like a 60-footer on one of them. And the other one, I believe he was pretty close. He was able to win last year, and then coming into this year, the defending champion, there was a lot of pressure on him. And then he put a little more pressure on himself by in an interview saying, basically, I'm here to prove the doubters wrong. Basically, I'm here to show everyone that I deserved to win last year, and it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just a one-off thing. So he brought all eyes on him. And by bringing all eyes on him, people are wondering, what's he about to do? He didn't perform. He does have one more round tomorrow to make a push, but sitting right now, he's in 54th place at 3 under par. And if you look at it, it's not really like there's one specific thing causing this. Across the board, he's kind of middle of the pack when you average out his stats. There's not a ton that's like, this is really going wrong. You can look at his Circle 1X putting. It's 69%. That's not great, but we saw Nikko's was only in the low 70s. So it's not like he's putting that much worse. One thing to note is he's 91st in OB rate with 5 OBs. So it's obvious he's just, his game is not together right now. He's obviously struggling a little bit. And he put a lot of pressure on himself. This was going to be a storyline regardless just because he was last year's champion. But as soon as you say, like, I'm here to prove the doubters wrong, if you're going to say something like that, you better prove the doubters wrong. Because if not, this is giving them fuel to the fire. One thing I will say that has surprised me about Colton, I got to watch a little bit of his round today following Paul. The guy throws a mile. And it doesn't look like he's throwing a mile. Like his form is a little bit like non-traditional, how he reaches down and pulls up and through. But my gosh, does he throw far. And I definitely think that Colton's someone who we're going to hear a little bit more about as the year goes on. But I don't see him being a top 15, top 10 player this year. Or, it's obviously hard to say what's going to happen in the future because if someone like him grinds it out in the offseason, which I believe he did this offseason, but if they're able to put some things together with his type of distance, he's definitely someone we could look, see a lot more in the future. But seeing him come out in 54th place, it was a little bit disappointing. I'm not going to lie to you. One other thing I want to touch on was Raven Newsom. We talked about him briefly when I was going down the leaderboard. He's going to be on the chase card tomorrow with Ricky, Calvin, and Gannon. One thing that's extremely impressive about him, I noticed this when I played with him in college. He's always been an extremely good putter, and that's staying the same this weekend. If you look at it, Circle 1X putting, he's leading the field. Him, Chris Dickerson, and Ulysses Munez, hopefully I pronounced that name right, with 100% Circle 1X putting. Normal week, that's impressive. This week, with how windy it's been, that's extremely impressive. I mean, I'm terrified when I'm out there watching people with a 15-foot putt because I know if that's me, that's an air ball because they're staring it down into a 30-mile-an-hour headwind. And he's at 100% Circle 1X putting. And Chris Dickerson is as well. Chris Dickerson is actually ahead of him on strokes gained putting because of the strokes gained in Circle 1X. I believe that's because Raven Newsom has been parked slightly more than Chris Dickerson, but regardless, they're both leading the field in that aspect. Raven also is leading the field in OB rate alongside Gannon Buhr at 0. So he's staying in the fairway. He's not making big mistakes OB, and there's 0 mistakes to speak of on the putting green. Another thing to note, his scramble rate is 100%. So if he's off the fairway, he's getting up and down for par. He's a North Carolina golfer. He went to NC State. It makes sense that he's going to be good at scrambling, but again, extremely impressive at this course to be going, and with how windy it is, to be 100% Circle 1X putting and 100% scramble rate. Raven Newsom, team MVP. He's someone that I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of throughout this year and into the future years. I believe he's rather young as well. I think he's only 23 or 22. So the future of the sport is kind of on display here this weekend, and it's bright because I believe Gavin Rathbone, I believe, is also in the under 25 age bracket, to where we have 3 guys in the top 6 that are up and comers, and it's exciting to see it. It's also a good mix-up. I feel like I know some people are probably upset that they're not seeing the Paul, Ricky, Calvin showdown, but I've enjoyed this little bit of a mix-up from what we've been normally seeing. Only other thing on the MPO side is what I'm expecting tomorrow. I kind of talked about this somewhat when I was looking at the leaderboard. If I had to put money down on it right now, I think that Nikko's going to walk away with this. If anyone catches him, I think it's going to be Ricky. Ricky is coming from the chase card, and like I said, he's not going to be on that lead card being able to directly put pressure on Nikko, but he's still going to be able to put pressure. If Ricky's able to knock off 2 or 3 shots on the front 9 to where he's right within Nikko a stroke or 2, I don't see Nikko holding on. If Nikko can get into 17 with a 2 or 3 stroke lead, I think Nikko's going to be able to hold on to this, but it's definitely going to be an interesting round tomorrow. There's a lot of movement that I think can happen on the MPO side. It's very close because out here with the wind, 5 strokes is really nothing. And so 5 strokes, that separates 8 players. 8 players within 5 strokes of the lead, that's nothing out here. There could very easily be a swing of 5 strokes. One thing to note as well is the weather tomorrow looks like there's going to be some thunderstorms overnight, rain into the morning. And then from what I've heard, the wind is going to be the opposite of what it's been all week. If that's true, that could play a huge factor into the round tomorrow because, when you're looking at hole 1, right now it's kind of been like a left to right head, I believe. That would make it left to right. That would make it a right to left tomorrow. Also, if you look at hole 18, it's been a ripping headwind. Tomorrow, if it's a ripping tailwind, you're probably going to see a lot more guys trying to go for the green if it is that tailwind, and that could make for a lot more mistakes on 18. It's also going to make the green a lot harder to reach on 17 if that's true. If it's a big tailwind, right now we're getting a ripping headwind, which means on 17 you're able to throw that forehand stall shot into the wind, let it stall, and let the wind carry it back. If that's a tailwind, if you're not in perfect position, you're not going to be able to get up and down, because if you're far back and you're throwing that high forehand that right now is being carried by the wind, it's going to get shot down and pushed out into the lake. So there's definitely going to be some interesting factors. It's also going to mean that 16 and 15 are going to be playing into a massive headwind instead of a tailwind that makes those holes way harder, brings the OB way more into play. This tournament on the MPO side is far from over. There's a lot of factors to consider, and it's going to be some really exciting golf to watch tomorrow. Now, let's jump over to the FPO side. The FPO side just finished up, and it's more surprising to me than the MPO side, to be completely honest with you. I did not expect this. I did not expect what we're seeing here. We have Kona Panis with a 10-stroke lead going into tomorrow's round over Madison Walker. Usually, if we're talking top 2, we're talking Katrina or Paige is in there. They're not even on the lead card. We have Kona, Madison Walker, Lisa Fakis, and Missy Gannon as our lead card tomorrow. Then Katrina Allen. If you want to find Paige, you're going to have to go, I believe that's the 4th card. She's in 14th place, solo 14th place at 5 over par right now, 17 strokes out of the lead. Now, usually when I'm looking at a tournament, I never call Paige Pierce out of it. Paige Pierce is out of this event. I am very confident in saying that. But really, almost this is Kona's tournament to lose / win. Kona has it in the bag. She could go out there tomorrow, and as long as she shoots realistically better than like a 5 or 6 over par, she's going to walk away with a win here, because we see Madison Walker is in 2nd place with a 3 down today. Put her at 2 down for the tournament. She was 1 over the first day. So she would have to shoot better tomorrow than she has through these first 2 days. And that's assuming that Kona shoots, what is that, 12 strokes worse? That's just, I don't see that happening. I think this is Kona's tournament here to win. You know, she went 6 down, 6 down. I believe that's been the hot round, both round for FPO. And it's been very impressive stuff. Let's actually take a look at her stats. Let's look a little deeper as what is working for Kona out here. We saw her win the All-Star event, which that was a little bit of a surprise, just because in the past, she has not been that consistent of a player. She has not been that consistent of a putter. She's been very open about that on social media. And, you know, coming into this year, she was not someone that we expected to really pop off and have a great year. But obviously something that she did in the offseason is really working. If we look at it, fairway hits, so her accuracy off the tee, second place. It's 78% of fairways hit. Circle 1 in regulation and Circle 2 in regulation, first place. She's giving herself a lot of looks for birdie. Birdie percentage, 44%, so she's capitalizing on those looks. And Circle 1X putting is at 79%, which is third place. This is something that even in calm tournaments, if you're putting 79% in Circle 1X, you're very high up in the FPO field. That is a very impressive stat, especially knowing how windy it is in the afternoons when these women are teeing off. They're playing some of the early open holes in extremely windy conditions, and then I just watched the coverage end up. I believe it was just as windy or more windy for them on 18 than when I saw Paul's card come through, you know, hours ago this afternoon. So for her putting to be that good with this amount of wind is amazing. She's actually first place in strokes gained putting at 7.84, and second place in strokes gained tee to green at 12.66. She's dominating. She's not outside the top 10 in any of the stat categories. Her worst one is the parked percentage at 6th place. Her OB rate, gained Circle 2, they're both 5th place. Everything else is 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. There's no stat that you can find here where Kona's struggling. Kona is having a great event. As we look over to who we usually see up here in Katrina Allen and Paige Pierce, their stats paint a slightly different story. It looks like where Katrina Allen is struggling is, first off, her usual struggle, Circle 1X putting, 16th place, 64%. We know that coming into the event. Katrina Allen has struggled with putting for quite a while now. One thing that is kind of surprising to me is her scramble percentage. She's at 17%. She's gotten up and down once and hasn't gotten up and down 5 times. That's 22nd in the field. You know, the rest of her stats are pretty normal to what we see. She's tied with Kona at 78% fairway hits. Her OB rate, she's only gone OB 3 times. She's throwing the disc well. That's something that Katrina Allen always does. But her putting is about usual. She's just not really capitalizing when she's out of position. And that's something that I think that's unusual for Katrina. She has a good forehand. She has a good backhand. She's usually able to get up and down and make these things happen. In this event, she's just not. It's just not happening. It's very surprising, but she is at least in 3rd place, even par. If something crazy happens with Kona tomorrow, if she comes out and blows up, Katrina's right in position to attack because she's only 2 strokes out of 2nd place. It would take something absolutely insane from Kona. It's going to take probably a very big number on hole 1. If Kona is even par or even under par through the first 3 or 4 holes, she's winning the event. Because for her to have the type of round that causes her to lose this event, something's going to have to happen early to get into Kona's head that really sets her off. In that case, if that happens, Katrina Allen is still in position to push up there. She's probably still going to finish top 2 at this event, I would imagine. So not super weird position-wise, but strokes-wise, the stroke differential between Katrina and the top is weird. You know, stroke differential and place-wise, Paige Pierce is shocking me this event. I'm just going to straight up say it. I was very confident that Paige was going to dominate this year, was going to win. Obviously, it's too early to counter out for dominating for the year. But to see this performance from her at this event is surprising to me. And it's not her putting. Circle 1X, 75%. Could be her circle 2 putting, 0%. Let's see how many she's attempted. 14 circle 2 putts. 14. That's actually very, very surprising. I will say that this course, the stats can be a little deceiving because in the woods, you can be in circle 2 and have nothing. That happened with Yuli. I was following his card. I was doing live scoring for his card today, and there were several times where Yuli was in circle 2, but having to throw like forehand zones as his upshot because he didn't have a putt. So the circle 2 stat can be a little deceiving, but 14 of them, she didn't have 14 looks that were cut off like that. So her circle 2 putt was off. You'd usually, personally, I would expect out of 14, Paige to make 2 to 3 of them, but normally she's not giving herself, 7 circle 2 putts around. So to me, that's showing that she's not really getting off the tee. 73%, 8th place, not a huge differential from her and Kona. But here's a big one for Paige as well, the scramble percentage. Only 8%. So there's been 11 times she hasn't got up and down. 1 time she has. Her strokes gained tee to green, 15th place. That's somewhere where you'd normally expect Paige to be well up there. Another one that's kind of surprising is the strokes gained circle 2. With 0 putts, she's losing 2.2 strokes to the average player in the field. She's also thrown OB 4 times. And then this one for Paige Pierce is extremely surprising. It's the majority because of this round. 33% of the holes that she's played out there has been bogey or worse. One of them being, I believe, hole 18 today. Let me get her score exactly right here. But hole 18, we saw pretty much all the women on lead card struggle drastically except for Kona. Yeah, we have Paige taking a 7 on that hole. She threw OB off her tee shot, threw her up shot a little long, missed the putt, and then, the comebacker, I believe she missed the comebacker and then had to make another 27, I would have to guess. Yeah, 27-foot putt for her 7. So she lost, even more strokes. That right there was 4 strokes to Kona. Another person that lost a very large amount of strokes to Kona on that final hole, actually knocked herself off of lead card, was Valerie Mandujano. She'd been having a great event, playing very decent, and then she took an 8 on hole 18. Again, just some struggles with upshots and stuff like that. I believe, we saw Valerie put it inbounds, upshot went OB, Kona went inbounds, parked, tap out birdie, and then Paige and Kat both threw OB on 18. It's definitely a very interesting FPO tournament. It might not be that interesting to watch coverage-wise, just because Kona's running away with it. But, tomorrow's lead card is going to be interesting to watch because it's going to be 4 players that we normally don't see them all. Normally we get 1 or 2 in addition to Paige and Kat, but to see Kona, Madison, Lisa, and Missy Gannon on a lead card tomorrow, it's going to be very interesting. It's also going to be very interesting to see if Katrina Allen is able to make that push into second place. I expect that she will. I'm expecting we're going to see Kona, Katrina Allen second, and probably Missy Gannon third. And then on MPO, again, I think we're going to see Nikko hold it down. It wouldn't surprise me to see Ricky sneak up in there, and I think Bradley Williams is going to hold on to it as well. So that's actually going to be it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. This is something that, for right now, obviously it's just me. I wanted to kind of test it, see what everyone thought of it, see what you guys think, if it's something that we should do for every Pro Tour. Right now we're thinking basically every Elite Series and Major, so National Tour, Pro Tour, and Majors. Obviously, if we do this again for the next one, we'll be back in the studio, have a camera set up. This is just a kind of spur-of-the-moment thing in my Airbnb. And then we might be able to bring on a co-host, whether it be Trevor or possibly bringing on a different co-host. There's a lot of things that we can do with this, but we definitely wanted to give you guys some type of breakdown, recap show where we go deep into the stats and try to see the full story here, because I think that there's a lot that's going on with the lead card, but we're missing a lot of stories. Like, for instance, Eagle is a huge story this tournament. Gannon Buhr, looking back into him a little bit. It's definitely going to hopefully provide you some more insight, provide you some more storylines to follow along. Be sure tomorrow to tune into the Disc Golf Network, watch the tournament live. If you can't tune in, watch it on UDisc Live, see what's going on, and hopefully this has provided you with a little bit more information to make the tournament more enjoyable. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you around.